How's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's live stream. This is our Friday live streams. We do these every single Friday. Either me, Lane, or Holly jump on to answer your guys' questions about the app. If you guys are getting hung up, if you guys have questions about anything related to fitness, nutrition, that type of thing, that is what I'm here for, to answer your guys' questions. So if you do have questions, the best place to put them, if you're on Instagram, is in the question box thing. Then I can pull it up on the screen for other people to see. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, best place to do that is just put them in the comments, and I'll see them on my screen here, and then I can pull those up as well. So it looks like we have one from YouTube that's on here already. So let me pull that one up. Why are ice cream servings in milliliters instead of grams? I wish they would list the density on the label. So I think you posted about this in the Carbon Facebook group. If you guys are not in the Carbon Facebook group, definitely join that. It's an awesome place to be. But I think I saw that post, and that is a really weird nutrition facts label. Is that in the United States? Because every nutrition facts label that I've seen has a gram unit for any of the serving sizes. So that looks like it might be outside of the US. I don't know who would measure their ice cream in milliliters. Like, are you gonna let it melt, and then you're gonna put it in a beaker and measure the milliliters of the ice cream and then drink it? I mean, it's kind of stupid to do it in milliliters. So I think I saw a good suggestion on the post, so I didn't comment. They said, because it also showed like a half a cup is this many milliliters. So what you can do is you can take a half cup serving spoon, scoop out the ice cream, put that on a scale, see what that weighs, and then you know how much a serving weighs, and then you can easily track it that way. So that's what I would recommend doing. You could also empty the whole container of ice cream into a different container and weigh what the ice cream weighs, the whole container, and then do some math based on the serving sizes to see how much, what the nutrition facts are per gram of the ice cream, and then you can track it that way. So that's what I would recommend doing. Thanks for the question. All right, let's see. Okay. So here's a good one here on Instagram about protein quality and quantity. So how much does protein quality matter? I get plenty, 2.5 grams per kilogram lean body mass, but a lot of it is bread and vegetables. So breads and vegetables aren't going to be complete sources of protein. So they're going to miss certain amino acids, specifically for muscle building and muscle retention. You want to make sure you're getting enough leucine, which is an amino acid, and that's found in animal sources of protein. So if you're only eating breads and vegetables and that's how you're getting all your protein, there's probably going to be a problem there. But if you are the other items that you're consuming throughout the day, if you have some animal sources in there, or if you're pairing complementary sources like beans and rice, for example. So like you can get a complete amino acid profile if you mix beans with rice, because they complement each other, and make sure that where one is lacking in amino acids, the other one's making up for it. So same thing, like if you have bread and vegetables, you're getting protein from that. You want to complement those types of foods with other foods that have the amino acids that you need. So long-winded answer, basically you're fine if you're getting plenty of protein, and then you have some either complementary proteins or animal proteins, you're going to be completely fine. So I wouldn't worry about that. All right. Okay, so we have one on Facebook. Hi, if I'm unable to do my 5 times a week resistance training this week, should I still follow my macros? I can only do 1/2 hour daily walks. So yeah, absolutely. I would still follow your macros. And if it's just like a single week where you are unable to get in all your workouts, that's not going to make really any kind of difference in the progress that you're going to make. But if you extend it out to multiple weeks and it becomes a trend, it's also not going to matter, because the coach is going to pick up on that trend based on the lack of progress that you made and adjust based on that. So I would always aim to hit your macro targets regardless of what your workouts are doing or anything like that. As long as you are tracking your macros, hitting your macros, checking in regularly each week with the coach, it's going to do the right thing over time and get you to where you need to be. So don't stress about not being able to get all your training sessions in this week, and just move on past that. Good question. All right. So messed up reverse, put on 5 pounds, put back on the 5 pounds they lost. Should they recut or just start reversing again? Reverse dieting is a very vulnerable time, because if you end up, going off the plan, overeating, gaining body fat, you're not going to be able to take that off again until you do another cut. So that's why reverse dieting can almost be sometimes harder than the actual dieting, because it takes a lot of control to not overeat as you're increasing calories. And if you do, you need to do another cut. So, but the problem is if you are constantly doing reverse dieting, you gain a little bit of weight, then you do a cut, you're never actually going to be able to improve your metabolism over time. So you have to be buckled down and be in it for the long haul. If you've been reversing for a while and you have gained 5 pounds over the whole course of your reverse or whatever, and now you want to take off some of that weight, then I think it would be fine to do a cut. But if you haven't been reversing for a while, I would not recommend going to a cut. You want to be patient. You want to remain reverse dieting and get your metabolism to a good place to where you can end up dieting more comfortably in the future or on higher calories in the future. That's the main goal of reversing. So that does sometimes come with weight gain, and it's just going to happen. But yeah, if you overdo it, don't think you all of a sudden need to cut now. Sometimes a lot of that weight can be water weight from, like, if you go out to eat or something and have a ton of sodium and eat meals that you're not normally eating, you're probably going to be retaining a lot of water. So don't stress, get back into your normal routine, see what happens with your weight, and then reassess at that point. All right. How do you count protein of a chicken breast, raw or after cook? The most accurate way is going to be raw, because that's how the nutrition facts label lists protein and cooked or in meats. So the information that you get from the food database is almost always going to be raw. So that's going to be the most accurate, because when you cook chicken, for example, it's going to lose weight. So you could have 6 ounces raw, and when you cook it, it might drop down to like 4 ounces. If you were tracking it as the 4 ounces after it's cooked, but you're using the value from the database as uncooked, you're actually under accounting for the protein that you're eating. So you're under accounting calories. So the best way is to do it how it's listed on the nutrition facts label. Now with chicken, it can be a little more difficult to deal with the raw meat and food safety type issues. So what you can do instead is, if you use a consistent method of cooking, like you grill it, for example, you can do kind of an initial conversion for yourself, and then you can use that tracking moving forward, as long as you use the same method cooking. So what you can do is you can weigh it raw the first time, then grill it, and then once it's done being grilled, weigh it again, see how much weight it lost. Then you know kind of the ratio or the conversion. So then you can, when you, in the future, then you can even make a custom food. So you can make a chicken breast that is eventually the cooked weight, by just taking that difference in weight and back calculating how much it would be if it was raw. So you can do that, and then you can create a custom food, then you can use that moving forward. I know there are a few items in the database that are cooked, but I don't always trust those. I usually just make my own kind of custom food. Like for chicken, for example, if I typically eat grilled chicken, I'll make a custom food or something based on the cooked weight, and then use that moving forward. It's just so much easier. There's going to be more variation and room for error with that, so keep that in mind. But for me, I think it's fine where I'm at right now in my stage of doing things to do it that way. All right. So here's a good question about reverse dieting and using carbon to do it. In the app, we have an option to get an initial calorie boost. So when you're reverse dieting, the app, by default, with 0 calorie boost, the app is going to start you out at your estimated maintenance. So based on what you've been consuming and what your weight's been doing, the app is able to estimate where your current metabolism is at. And that's where reverse dieting is going to start you at, because by definition, you're going to be maintaining there. And then you want to build up from there and reverse diet and hopefully increase your metabolism over time. So it's going to start you there. The 10 or 20% calorie boost options basically just increase 10 or 20% of calories above that value. Now, why would you want to do that? There's certain scenarios where you might want to be more above your maintenance value. And those scenarios are if you're very, very lean, like if you're doing a show or something, for example, and you get super lean, reversing out of that, you don't want to just start at your estimated maintenance, because your maintenance is very, very suppressed at that point. And if you were to start at your estimated maintenance, you're still going to be pretty starving starting your reverse. So you would want to do a 10 or 20% calorie boost from there to get you to put on more body fat in the initial stage, just to get you feeling more normal again. So if you're very lean, 10 or 20% calorie boost can be fine if you're okay with adding a little bit more body fat initially, but getting your calories up more quickly. If you're doing a show or coming out of a show, that's probably where more the 20% is gonna be. If you are you've been dieting for a while, you're really lean, you want to get calories up a little more quickly, but you don't want to go overboard, that's where the 10% comes in. So it's up to you, but most people that aren't like super lean are just going to want to have 0 calorie boost, just do the default and get started with the reverse diet that way. All right, got a lot here on Facebook, YouTube I got to get to. April, tips, ideas for using carbon through pregnancy. Should I set the app to gain weight each week? It's really difficult to give you recommendations here. The app wasn't designed for coaching somebody through pregnancy. That's where an OBGYN and maybe help with a dietitian one-on-one can help you figure that out. There's a lot of things that come into play with pregnancy, and there are a lot of micronutrient requirements as well. So using carbon during your pregnancy is not recommended by us. You can certainly use it after, and even while you're breastfeeding, as long as you don't take calories too low. But during pregnancy, it wasn't designed for that, so I wouldn't recommend using it for that. All right. Question about diet break thing, switching back. Do you recommend weighing in every day, or doesn't even matter? I would just weigh every day, regardless of what week it is, what setting you're on. Weighing every day is a good practice to get into, just because it can help you detach from the daily scale weights and not stress so much about them, because you're able to see the overall trend in your graphs and with the coach and stuff. So weighing more often, unless there's a psychological issue with weighing more often is usually better. All right. So sometimes in fat loss, I see inch difference on my waist, but not on my, but no difference in average weight. Will carbon reduce calories further? Yeah, it will reduce calories further because you set a goal rate of loss per week, and the app will keep your average rate of loss in that range. So if you don't lose scale weight on average and you have it set that you want to lose scale weight on average, it's going to make an adjustment. Week to week measurements are going to be very inaccurate and difficult to pick up on changes. So like you could literally just hold it an inch differently or whatever, an inch higher or whatever, and you could be multiple inches off on your measurements. So it's not an accurate way to gauge weekly progress, whereas your average weight is an accurate way to do that. So that's why we don't really take waist into account or measurements on a weekly basis like that to do adjustments, because people would just maybe measure a little bit differently and then they're not going to get the results that they want. So yeah, you can keep measuring your waist, but I think doing that on a weekly basis to gauge progress is not a good idea. I would just do average weight and look at that to gauge your progress. All right. Do our custom foods get entered in the main database? I'm just wondering where so many erroneous entries came from. You really have to be careful when you choose from there. I thought our database was pretty good. I've used many tracking apps in the past, and I have noticed a lot of bad entries. But with ours, we license a food database that's verified by dietitians and stuff, and they make sure that entries are accurate for the most part. Now, some items might be inaccurate, but I feel like our database is pretty good in terms of that. To your question, though, none of the custom foods that you make get added into any like overall database for all users. The custom foods that you make are kind of stored just locally in your own database of foods, and then when you search, it pulls from the main database that everybody has access to, and also your database that you have your custom foods in. So it doesn't add those to the main thing. So if there are erroneous entries, that's what's in the database that we license, and there's nothing we can really do about that. My daughter just signed up for Carbon. Awesome, Trisha. Thank you for getting your daughter to sign up. Hopefully she does well and enjoys the app. What's up, Nina? All right. Is reverse dieting still recommended to someone who isn't interested in adding any additional muscle but wants to just maintain current physique? So if you want to maintain your current physique and not add additional muscle, maintenance setting would be the way to go. You would do the maintenance setting and then continue doing whatever you're doing on the training side so that you can maintain your current physique. So don't change your training up. Go to the maintenance setting, and that's going to help you maintain where you're currently at, your current physique and everything. If you're reverse dieting, there's a potential there for increasing your weight and body fat, which you might not like. You might be able to reverse diet for a little while before seeing any weight gain. So depends on where your current metabolism's at. If it's slower, you might be able to reverse diet for a little bit before you start gaining any weight. But that's very personal thing. But general question, you're going to want to be on maintenance if you want to maintain your physique. Will there ever be a desktop version of Carbon? I'm not going to say never, but I don't really see the benefit of that, just because you would have to be at a computer, like at home or something, to do your tracking. Whereas if it's a iPhone app or Android app, you have your phone with you everywhere you go, and you typically track throughout the day. So I don't really see the benefit of a desktop version right now, but I'm not going to say never. All right. So I just started a fat loss diet on the app. I'm nervous about the amount of protein recommended and would like to increase it. Would it be okay to increase protein and decrease carbs 1-to-1, or do I just need to suck it up? So you can increase protein, you can decrease protein, you can increase carbs, you can decrease carbs based on your preference. Like, we allow a certain amount of adjustment based on your diet preference. And if you're within those slider ranges, you're going to be completely fine. There should be no worries about anything. Adjusting within those sliders is a preference thing. So it sounds like you prefer more protein, so go into your diet preferences and up the protein. And as long as you are using that feature, those diet preference sliders, you're going to be completely fine and nothing to worry about. So the best diet for you is the one that you can stick to. So adjust the ratios of your macros to fit how you typically eat, what you prefer. And as long as you're using our app to do that in the diet preference, no worries. All right. How do you track sushi? So sushi, the way that places make sushi is very similar. So what you can do is you can just search for sushi, the type of sushi roll that you had, like a California roll or a Philadelphia roll or whatever. You can find that in the nutrition database, and it's going to be pretty accurate. If you're getting like the really fancy kind of sushi rolls that are very specialty, it's going to be harder. And then it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to track. You can try searching the restaurant's website for nutrition information. If they don't have it, you can search maybe a competitor's website for the nutrition information if it's not in our food database. But tracking sushi shouldn't be that difficult. You can just search in the database and hopefully find something, and then just a roll is typically the same size across, all sushi rolls. So if it's in the database as a roll, you can track it that way. How much should I weigh if I'm 5'8", 15-year-old? Man, I have no idea. How much you need to weigh to perform the best playing soccer? I don't know. There's like recommended weights based on BMI and stuff. You can look up the BMI chart to see what maybe you should weigh at 5'8". But yeah, that's like a difficult question for me to give you a specific answer there. All right, I've gained weight while on vacation 2 weeks ago, and it hasn't gone back down much. I'm reversing. Could it be that I've upped my calories as far as they will go? So if you've gained weight from your 2-week vacation, you likely overate on your vacation above your maintenance value. So that's why you gained weight. And the reason why it's not coming back down is because one, it was likely body fat, and two, because you are reversing. So if you're reversing, you're not going to be in a calorie deficit, and you're not going to be able to lose that body fat that you added from the overeating from vacation. So depending on how long you've been reverse dieting, maybe it's time to stop reverse dieting and move on to the next goal. Maybe if your metabolism's in a good place, maybe go into fat loss if you're uncomfortable with the body fat you gained. But it depends on what your, I guess, next and long-term goal is for things. So yeah, unfortunately, I mentioned it earlier, but reverse dieting is a very vulnerable time. And if you overeat, that weight and body fat is not going to come off until the next time you diet. So it takes a lot of diligence to reverse diet properly without stuffing it up. And towards the end, it becomes increasingly vulnerable, because you hit like a tipping point. I noticed with people where there's this tipping point where, you know, they're able to increase calories quite a bit without gaining really any weight. And then all of a sudden they hit this threshold and boom, all of a sudden they start packing on the weight. Like metabolism's interesting that way, that there's like these thresholds that you hit and then all of a sudden, boom, something happens. So at the end of the reverse, you're getting closer and closer to that tipping point. So for people that don't need to completely squeeze out their metabolic capacity, they could maybe stop reverse dieting a little sooner before that point to avoid some of that really rapid weight gain that can happen at the end of a reverse diet. But yeah, if you want to maximize everything completely, you need to get closer and closer to that kind of tipping point. All right. Elizabeth, will the planner ever be available when you're doing custom macros? I'm using BioLane Coach. I'm using Carbon in a custom setting. Would love to be able to use the planner. So the way it's set up right now, there's not really a good way to use custom macros and the planner, unfortunately. But what you can do is you will need to create a goal with the coach. Now you can set custom macros and have a goal with the coach, and then that'll allow you to use the calorie planner. But you can't use the calorie planner without having a goal created with the coach. So you could create just any goal really with the coach, and then put in your custom macros from your coach, and should be able to use the planner. But yeah, in the future, maybe it would be nice to allow more customization in the calorie planner and allow people to enter maybe custom macros. But right now, unfortunately, that's how you got to do it. Sometimes I fall outside of the macro range for carbs and fats at check-in, even if I have my calories perfectly. Total calories are still correct. Is the check-in? It's like the check-in isn't accounting for diet preference changes. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a bug or what I'm doing wrong. There's no way to account for the diet preference changes, because diet preferences aren't really set up to be changed frequently. That's more of a setting you set and forget, because hopefully you eat similar ways each week and similar foods. So diet preferences isn't meant to be changed like on a daily basis. So it's when you check in those macros on that check-in screen, they're not going to reflect any changes that you make in the diet preference. So it will be thrown off of that. But since you are typically across the board, protein is going to be the same, and then the calories are going to be the same. So if you hit your protein and calories for the week, and it was a week where you adjusted the diet preferences, then you know you're fine. But yeah, it's not necessarily a bug. It's just you are using the diet preference setting differently than how it was, I guess, intended. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we want to improve with that in the app, and it's going to take time, but that's another thing that's kind of on our radar. All right, training question. So say I'm targeting 20 to 30 reps on a lift. Is it detrimental to stop for a couple seconds mid-set just to catch my breath and be able to bust out more reps, or should I stop when my tempo drops? So if you're doing 20 to 30 reps and you are losing your breath before your muscles kind of fatigue and give out, that's a sign that you're doing too high of reps, or your cardiovascular fitness is not where it needs to be. You can still make good progress doing higher reps, but you have to take the muscle to like muscular failure almost. If you're going 20 to 30 reps, you got to take it very intense, and at the end of the set needs to basically be failure. So if you're going to do higher reps, you have to really train closer to failure. And so stopping to catch your breath, it sounds like you are not using enough weight. So I would use more weight and maybe drop the reps, or if you're going to do higher reps, make sure you're going close to failure. So if you're on a reverse diet, but will go on vacation for 2 weeks and won't be doing any resistance training, what do you recommend to do with nutrition? So depends on what your vacation is. If you're going to be active during your vacation or not, or if you're going to be like a couch potato. Most people are pretty active during their vacation, so their calorie needs still end up being pretty similar to where they were before. So you could just remain on the same setting, don't change anything, and just eat the same calories every day. And if you remain active, it's probably not going to make much of a difference. Oh, so you don't mean catching your breath, but more so clearing out metabolites a bit. This happens a lot with curls. I don't think that's a good practice because when you're doing higher reps, the goal is to really build up those metabolites. So you want to build up those metabolites so much that you end up going to muscular failure. If you stop, and take breaths, it's basically like a mini rest between your sets. Like I don't think that's the optimal way to do things. I would keep going and go until you can't really go anymore, and then take a full-on rest in between your set, then do another set. So with high reps, it's more metabolite training anyway, so you want to make sure you're building up those metabolites. All right, back to Insta. Let's see here. Should diet macros change when sick? Probably not. So when you're sick, your metabolic rate actually increases, and then you also are less active, so they kind of counteract each other and counterbalance. And typically, you're about at the same place as you were before. So yeah, you require more calories, but then you're also less active when you're sick, so it evens out. So I would keep them the same. If I'm 15, can I use your app or no? No, you got to be 18 to, I guess, legally use our app. All right, we got some down here. All right. I previously worked at a very active job, and now my current job is just driving, so it's not active. Can I adjust that without it resetting the coach? So if you have a drastic change in your activity level, then I would go in and create a new goal with the new activity level that you have. If it's a little bit more of a gradual, or if you're okay with the app lagging a little bit, a week or two to catch up to where you need to be, you could stay on the same setting and just keep checking in. If you wanted to change right now based on your new activity, you have to the app has to calculate kind of new at that point. So you don't have to reset the coach, but you would have to create a new goal. And then with the new goal, you would have to have it calculate new based on new. Instead of having it use estimated maintenance, you would calculate new, and then that'll let you put in your estimated activity levels and such, and then create a goal based on that. If you do that, it's not going to take into account your previous data. So it's up to you which method you want to choose. I would probably just stay on the same setting, be patient, give it a week or two, and then the app is gonna pick up anyway and find where you need to be. But yeah. If I don't lose my target weight and I'm 10 weeks into a diet, will the app adjust calories to my target weekly weight loss from the start of the diet? So I think I understand what you're asking. What I think you're asking is like, will the app, let's say your goal this week was to lose 2 pounds, you lost a pound, but you, wait. So I think what you're saying is like, if you have it set to lose, let's say a pound a week, you're 10 pounds, you're 10 weeks in, like, will the coach adjust based on it wanting you to be 10 pounds down at this check-in? No, it doesn't do that. It looks like week to week at your progress rate week to week and make sure that your average is falling within that. So if you only lost, let's say, your average weight loss this past week was, a pound, and you have it set to 2 pounds of loss on average per week, it's going to adjust to get you to lose that 2 pounds a week on average. It's not going to like try to make up past weeks where you didn't make progress, if that makes sense. All right. So Vanessa, I went over my set macros and lost 2 pounds a week. Why did my calculated macros still give me the lower macros? Does a live coach look at my data, or is it automated? So it's a coaching algorithm that Lane, Holly, and I have created. So it's not an actual person that's looking at your data and making macro adjustments. So why did your calculated macros still give me the lower macros? So if you ate over and you were not compliant to the coach's recommended macros, it's not going to make adjustments until you are able to hit the macros that the coach recommends. So even though you lost 2 pounds a week, you probably still had to mark non-compliant. The coach isn't going to adjust at that point. So if it's way off and you are losing really fast and you're still really overeating your macros, something is funny with the initial calculation that you got, whether you put in inaccurate information or your metabolism is just a lot faster than what the system estimated. Like for carbon to work correctly, you need to be compliant to the macro targets that it gives you, and then it will make the adjustments that it needs to make. So depending on how far you are away from there, it's going to be a different thing. But this is a very specific kind of question that I would reach out to support about. They can give you their feedback and recommendation on how to move forward with the coach in your setting and that kind of thing. So Vanessa, I would reach out to support. Okay, so like week 10, I can expect to still be losing that 2 pounds. Yes. So even though weight loss tends to be faster towards the initial phase of a diet and slows down more towards the end of the diet, the coach is going to make adjustments so that you are on average losing 2 pounds a week, and try to flatten that out. So in order to do that, it's going to have to reduce your calories over time as you diet to bring up that rate of loss back to the 2 pounds. So it's going to try to keep that average at 2 pounds a week loss, if that makes sense. All right. Great questions today, guys. All right, let's see. I think I missed one here. Do you have Indian food database in your app? Unfortunately, we don't. The nutrition databases we license are United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. So if you live in those areas, there's going to be branded food items for your location. If you are outside of those regions, there's not going to be branded food items, or it's very unlikely to be the branded food items that you buy at your grocery store, but there will still be the kind of general food items, like the basic food items, that don't necessarily have like a nutrition label or whatever, like, banana, apple, like those types of more general food items are still in there and going to be the same across any location, but it's the branded food items that are not going to be in your app if you live in India. So what workouts are push and what workouts are pull? So push workouts are any exercises that you push. You use pushing muscles. So like your pushing muscles are going to be your triceps, your shoulders, your chest. Those are typically your push muscle groups that you're going to work out on a push day. Pull muscles are your biceps, your back. Those are going to be pull type muscles. And then legs typically are separated out, so typically the split is like push, pull, legs. So you do push one day, pull the other day, and then you do legs. That's how some people like to break it out. I personally like the push, pull, leg split a lot. I use that quite often. So how long does it take for weight fluctuations to go away? Typically a few days, 1 to 2 days, I would say, after you have a day where you're retaining water. It typically will go away in a few days if you go back to your normal routine and your normal way of eating. So if you have like one day where you eat a ton of sodium, but your normal average is a lot lower, as long as you go back to that normal and then you give it a day or two, your weight should be back to where it was before. Going on vacation with no Wi-Fi or cell reception, so you can't use the app to track your macros. Any advice to avoid not overeating? Yeah, plan ahead. Like make a meal plan for yourself that hits your macros. Then you don't need to track it, and you can just go on autopilot and eat those foods. Depends on your vacation. Like if you don't want to follow like a meal plan like that on vacation, you don't have to. It's up to you. But if you want to kind of stay on track with your goals and hit your macros, you need to plan before you lose that cell phone reception. All right. Is cardio running better to do before or after weights? Also, is fasted cardio better? Better for what is the question? My guess is you're asking for better for fat loss, so I'll respond in that way. Before or after weights doesn't matter for fat loss at all, because you're going to end up in the same place regardless of if you're doing it before or after your weights. But before or after weights can have a really big impact on your performance for your workout. So you could potentially not get as good of a workout if you're doing cardio before. So I would always do cardio after weights. And if you can separate it out, if your schedule allows you to separate out cardio even further away from your workout, I would do that. The more you can separate it out, the better, in my opinion. And then in terms of fasted or fed cardio, also makes no difference on fat loss. You can do whatever you enjoy doing. Like if you're a person that wants to do cardio first thing in the morning fasted, just because it's quick, it's easy. You don't have to think about what you want to eat before you go do it. You just get it done and then you start your day. You can do that. It's not necessarily more beneficial for fat loss, but it's a preference thing. So go with whatever you enjoy doing best. Doing mass gain and coach seems pretty conservative with calorie increases. Is that related to the tipping point you mentioned? The tipping point thing I mentioned is more for reverse dieting. If you're on like the mass gain setting, the coach is going to increase to try to get you to lose gain at the rate that you have set. So that's if it's being conservative though, just because, you know, maybe your average is pretty close to where it needs to be. So when it makes a conservative adjustment, that's because, you know, you don't need as much to get you to that point where you need to be gaining. And yeah, so if we were to make big adjustments, we would likely see, you know, a lot more jumping around of like your weight and the coach macros. Like we needed to smooth it out a little bit. So that's why we look at more the average of your gain, and then make an adjustment to get the average to where it needs to be. So yeah, not necessarily the tipping point thing I mentioned, but increasing conservatively is usually a good idea. And if I'm non-compliant 1 week, does the food and weight that I log during that non-compliant week factor into future weeks? No, it doesn't. So right now we don't really do anything with non-compliant week data. We talked about ways to possibly use that in the future, but we don't currently do anything with that. So all right. So Beth on Facebook, I'm in a mental struggle with reverse dieting, coming off of maintenance to gain muscle. Seeing my weight go up and body fat has me going crazy. I was very skinny and want to gain muscle that's visible. Shredded look, I'm 42, 112, 13.9% body fat. 13.9% body fat is pretty lean for a woman. So you may be trying to hold on to a leanness that's not necessarily maintainable. So you might have to let go a little bit of that and be okay with a little bit of body fat gain if your goal is to build muscle. Training plays a very, very big part in this whole process. So you could be not giving your muscles the stimulus it needs to build muscle. So you might need to reevaluate your training, see if you're doing enough. You know, you might have to do more training volume to maximize muscle building. But yeah, seeing weight go up, it can really mess with a lot of people's minds. You need to detach your feelings with what the number on the scale shows. It can be hard, but the more you can detach from that, especially during like a reverse diet or like a gaining phase, and focus on maybe other things like your performance in the gym, like use that as like a motivating factor. Look at, you know, your strength on exercises and how you can increase them over time, and use that as the time to focus on that. And then try not to stress as much about the weight side of things. Obviously with Carbon, weight is a factor in how the app works, but you can still not stress about it and use Carbon. So yeah, it can be tough. Gaining some weight while reverse dieting and trying to build muscle can sometimes be a necessary evil when you're trying to build muscle. So I'm doing the workout builder Get Lean 2. So that should be enough training volume. I would make sure your intensity is where it needs to be. You're training, I'm not sure how she has it set up in terms of like your intensity, like your reps in reserve or your RPE, but I would evaluate if you are training close enough to failure on your exercises and pushing yourself hard enough on that. But otherwise, you're probably going to have to allow yourself a little bit of body fat gain and focus on really killing it in the gym. Reason I'm asking is because I'm averaging 2 pounds a week, or 0.2 pounds a week gain, and target's 0.7. Is expecting a bigger jump, but makes sense. They wouldn't want to overcorrect and have it back off again. Yeah, overcorrecting is a problem, so we wanted to avoid that. And then also there's a range. So like if you have your target set at 0.7, there's a buffer range in there where there's like a non-adjusting range. So it's a percentage, but like it could not adjust your macros if you are gaining 0.5 to 0.9 or something, you know. So there is that range that as long as you're within it, it's not going to make adjustments. But when you're outside of it, then it's going to make adjustments so that you get inside of that range. So yeah, don't want to overdo it with the adjustments, but we also want to adjust enough to get you to progress at the rate that you want. So it's kind of a fine balance. What's the best way to measure body fat for weekly check-ins? The way that's most convenient for you that you can repeat every week. So I see a lot of people try to get DEXAs and stuff and really want to get DEXAs because they hear it's more accurate. The problem with that is you can't really get it weekly. If you could, I mean, it's expensive and people aren't going to do it weekly. It's such a pain to try to do that. So, and then also, I don't know, like there might be risks for getting it more often or whatever, but the best way is the way that you can do consistently and easily. So I like to do my scale. I have like a Nokia or Withings Body Plus scale that gives me my weight and my body fat. I just step on that every day and then spits out a number. And then the app can look at what's the average of all those values. So if I weigh daily, you know, it's getting 7 days of body fat values. The average of that, if it looks at the average of that, it's going to be pretty accurate in terms of like the week-to-week changes of the average. The value isn't necessarily going to be super accurate, but it's really more the change that matters. So the number isn't as important as so what's happening to that value over time. If that makes sense. So pick a method that's easy for you to do. Those scales are pretty easy, but keep in mind the number that it spits out is probably not going to be as accurate as other methods. All right. Guys, if you have any more questions, I have a few more minutes here. Answer 1 or 2 more questions here, but put them on the comments, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram comments, or in the question thing. If there's a few questions, I'll answer them yet, but we're about close to wrapping up here. So I found my weight dropped significantly after my menstrual cycle. I want to avoid a calorie increase. Should I hit non-compliant or another week of close to cycle? You could probably do either. If your weight is likely affected by your menstrual cycle, I would say yes to that question. I tend to not like telling people to mark non-compliant if they actually are compliant, but hitting non-compliant is a way to prevent a calorie adjustment. So you could do that, but I wouldn't, I guess, make a habit of it, or it's up to you. Like you can use that however you like, but yeah, it can be tough when your weight jumps around so much due to your menstrual cycle. And that's why weighing more frequently is super important. Like even during your menstrual cycle week or whatever, weighing every day can be a very important thing, because if you're weighing every single day and you're being compliant with the coach, it's really going to make sure your rolling average is where it needs to be. So even if you have some weight fluctuations for a week there, it's kind of looking at 3 weeks-ish of your weight averages and weight loss. So if you're weighing daily, consistent, and you're compliant every week, going the week after your period, it shouldn't really matter in terms of even saying yes or no, honestly, to that question, it shouldn't matter as much because it's looking at more of that average. Is body recomposition coming to the app anytime soon? Looking forward to it. No, it's not, because body recomposition is something that is very difficult to do when you aren't in a specific group. So like if you're not new to training, if you haven't come off a long layoff of training, or if you're not taking some substance or whatever, body recomp is very unlikely to happen. So if you're in those specific scenarios, I would choose maintenance as your goal, because you're going to be maintaining your weight on a recomp. So you can choose maintenance, and then if you're in those scenarios where you can recomp, you will recomp. But there's not really going to be a recomp setting that we can use in the app, just because if your goal is to lose body fat, the best way to do that is to lose weight, and weight train, make sure you get enough protein, that type of thing. If your goal is to build muscle, the best way to do that optimally is to gain some weight. So that's why we don't really have like we don't really have a body recomposition option. So sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. Got a few seconds left here. Maybe I'll take one more. All right, I'll take this one on YouTube here. How many calories do you think is acceptable to cycle through throughout the week, like to have more on the weekend? Is there an upper limit? It's a good question. Personally, I don't like huge swings in my calories throughout the week. Like if you're using the calorie planner in Carbon, you can adjust it quite a bit. The app will let you go basically to your calorie floor on your low days, and then however high that lets you go on the high days. I think that's a lot, and I wouldn't necessarily do that, but we allow that in the app. I think the best way, maybe if you want like a figure, maybe only do 20% above your average calories or something like that for your high days. That might be acceptable on the weekends. But at the end of the day, it's not going to matter in terms of progress, really. As long as you're getting your daily protein in and you're hitting your calories on average for the whole week, it's not going to really matter. So you could take it all the way down to your calorie floor on your low days, and then go as high as possible on the other days and make the same amount of progress. The only difference is, you're going to be pretty starving on your low days, and then on your high days, you're going to really stuff yourself. So I don't really like that feeling. So I like to be a little bit more conservative with my lower limit and upper limit. All right, so that is going to be it for this live stream. It has been an hour. We are done for today. But if you guys enjoy these, we do these every single Friday. Either myself, Lane, or Holly hop on here, answer you guys' questions about the app, where you're getting hung up. And so Lane is next Friday, so be sure to tune in if you want to ask Lane questions next Friday about the app. If you're not currently a member of Carbon Diet Coach, recommend you check it out, subscribe. And App Store, you can download it on iOS, Android. It's available on both. Plan starting at $9.99 a month. You can also purchase a year for $79.99 and save like $40 if you know you're going to be using it for a while. So there's an option to do that. You can also purchase 6 months if you want. But yeah, so check it out. It's unfortunately not free. So if you want to see what it can do for you before you join, you can go to joincarbon.com, visit the Help Center, check out the videos and articles we have there. You can also join our Facebook group, where you can see a lot of member success stories and people asking questions about the app. You can get a good idea of how it works there. So yeah, either place would be good. Thank you all for tuning in to this live stream, and I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. See you later.